Sky News understands that some cabinet ministers have written to the Prime Minister in an urgent attempt to soften some of the spending cuts being considered ahead of the budget. We understand letters went over the head of the Chancellor to Sir Keir Starmer and to Number 10. Our Deputy Political Editor Sam Coates joins me on this story. Sam, fascinating stuff. I mean, firstly, how many letters are we talking about, and how significant is it that they would go direct to Number 10?
We believe that at least 3 cabinet ministers went over the heads of Rachel Reeves, Angela Rayner, Deputy Prime Minister, Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, Lou Hague, the Transport Secretary, and appealed directly to Number 10. But I'm going to just give you some breaking news, Wilf, because we've got an update on this story. Yesterday was meant to be the deadline for most of the process of the preparation of the budget being wrapped up. Last night was the moment that the Treasury were meant to send off all the main parts of the budget in a couple of weeks to the financial watchdog, the Office for Budget Responsibility, and this budget in large part was meant to be done. But I am told that there is more than one government department that failed to come to an agreement overnight. We don't have the details of exactly which department at this stage, but I understand that last night the Treasury was unable to conclude the negotiations with more than one government department over how many cuts, how big the cuts should be, and to what in this year's budget and next year's budget those cabinet ministers would have to implement in order to deal with what they say is a massive black hole and the need to reprioritise spending. You'll know that Rachel Reeves thinks that she has to find up to £40 billion, largely from tax rises, but also from some spending reprioritisation in order to deal with what she thinks is underfunding in public services. But in part because of big increases to public sector pay, that's putting pressure on budgets this year and next. The government hoping to run the argument that things might be difficult now but get better in the future. But cabinet ministers are worried that it's just too painful at the moment, and there seems to be last-minute wrangling, unusual, quite high tempo and high drama last-minute wrangling. Some people at the centre of government say this is completely normal, and maybe it is true to say that back and forth at the last minute isn't uncommon when government departments are trying to do their negotiations with the Treasury. But what does seem unusual is the strength of the briefing coming from across Whitehall at the concern at what Rachel Reeves is trying to do. We will see what happens, and we will find out more in the coming days.
Sam, really interesting. I mean, that was going to be my question. I mean, how rare is it to miss this deadline? I'm sure if this was a couple of weeks ago, back and forth between departments would be pretty standard, saying, oh, please don't cut quite so much money from our budget. As you cross a deadline, is that pretty rare? I say that with the knowledge that, what's the date, the 17th? We've still got 13 days for the OBR to score this. If it gets to them in the next day or two, presumably everything's back in hand.
That's right. So there is a deadline. This is the deadline that negotiations are meant to have wrapped up in order that the Office for Budget Responsibility can kind of audit what's going on. A bit of a miss of a deadline is not that uncommon. Of course, cabinet ministers play hardball in their negotiations with the Treasury. What seems to be unusual to me is that this is accompanied by people who are concerned about the kind of decisions that they're being asked to make by the Treasury and the manner in which the negotiations are being conducted. The Treasury would say that everything's happening in the normal manner, that they're pursuing a method of negotiation that has existed for many years, largely under the Tories. Of course, Labour ministers don't have a great deal of experience in this, but the combination of the lateness of the negotiation plus what I'm picking up across Whitehall is the unusual thing here.
Just finally, Sam, I mean, you mentioned Lou Hague was one of the people with the transport budget, obviously. In terms of Angela Rayner being one of the people who I think reportedly you were saying has gone over the head of the Chancellor and written a letter to the Prime Minister on this, that there's been much debate over the last couple of months of the power, the real power that the Deputy PM has. I guess in the next couple of days we're going to see the extent to which the Prime Minister backs his Chancellor or his Deputy PM.
Yeah, the picture there is complicated. It does appear that Angela Rayner is unhappy with some elements of the spending settlement. We don't have full details of that. However, one of the big things in her department is housing, and that is one of the big priorities for this budget. So I would expect a generous settlement in order to get Britain building again, in order to get planning, sort of flex those planning muscles, and in order to build some homes. That's a key strategic priority for this government, and I would expect to hear money about that bit. I wonder whether the problems are more whether or not there's enough money, for instance, for local government, which is also part of Angela Rayner's remit, and other bits of public services that she is concerned about. We don't know the full details of what the problem is, but just the fact that she appears to be one of the figures who's making points hard at the Treasury, and this has come to light, is fascinating at this point.
Sam, as always, thanks so much.